Jake Morrison pressed his face against the small window of the research ship and watched the stars. He was 16 years old, and this was his first trip into deep space. His mother, Dr. Lisa Morrison, had finally agreed to let him come along on her research mission to study alien plants near the Kepler 442 system. "Jake, come help me with these samples," his mother called from the lab section of their ship, the New Horizon. The ship was not very big. It had space for only 15 people, and right now it carried 12 crew members plus Jake and his mother. Jake walked over to where his mother was working. She was looking at strange purple plants they had collected from a small moon. The plants glowed softly in the dark, and they seemed to move even when there was no wind. "These plants are amazing," his mother said with excitement in her voice. "They can live in space without any air or water. If we can understand how they work, we might be able to grow food on ships during long trips." Jake was about to ask a question when the ship's alarm started making loud noises. Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the speaker system. "Everyone to the main deck immediately. We have a big problem." Jake and his mother hurried to the main deck where all the crew members were gathering. Through the big window at the front of the ship, Jake could see something that made his heart stop. A huge alien ship was floating in space in front of them. It was bigger than anything Jake had ever seen. The alien ship looked like it was made of blue crystal, and it was so long that Jake could not see both ends of it at the same time. They appeared out of nowhere, Captain Rodriguez said. His face was very pale. "They're scanning our ship with some kind of beam." Suddenly a voice spoke to them. It did not sound like a human voice. It was deep and strange, and it seemed to come from the walls of their ship. "Human vessel, you will stop moving and prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to escape will result in your destruction." Jake felt scared, but he tried not to show it. His mother put her hand on his shoulder. "Stay close to me," she whispered. The crew tried to send messages asking for help, but something was blocking their communications. They could not contact Earth or any other human ships. They were completely alone. Within minutes, bright lights appeared around their ship. Jake watched through the window as strange beings in spacesuits flew toward them. The beings were tall and thin with 4 arms each. Their skin looked blue and see-through, like glass. They moved through space without any ships, somehow flying on their own. The aliens cut through the hull of the New Horizon like it was made of paper. They came inside wearing helmets that let them breathe. When they took off their helmets, Jake could see their faces clearly for the first time. They had 4 large eyes and mouths full of sharp teeth. Their heads were shaped like triangles, and they made clicking sounds when they talked to each other. One of the aliens, who seemed to be their leader, pointed at the humans with 2 of his 4 arms. He spoke in the same strange voice they had heard before. "You are now prisoners of the Zephyrian Empire. You will come with us for evaluation. Resistance will result in immediate death." The aliens separated the humans into groups. Jake watched as his mother was taken to one group with some of the scientists. The ship's crew was put in another group, but Jake was kept separate from everyone else. The alien leader walked up to Jake and looked at him with all 4 of his eyes. "You are young," the alien said. "Young specimens are valuable for adaptation studies." Jake did not understand what that meant, but it sounded scary. He wanted to run to his mother, but 2 aliens were holding his arms. His mother was trying to get to him too, but the aliens would not let her move. "Take them to the ship," the alien leader ordered. "Destroy their vessel." The aliens forced Jake and the other humans into small flying vehicles that carried them to the huge crystal ship. Jake watched through a small window as the New Horizon exploded in a ball of fire. Everything they had brought from Earth was gone. All of his mother's research, all their food, all their ways to get home, everything was destroyed. Inside the alien ship, Jake was amazed by what he saw. The walls were covered with strange creatures that glowed with soft light. The creatures looked like jellyfish, but they were attached to the walls and ceiling. They provided light for the whole ship. The floors felt warm under Jake's feet, and the air smelled like flowers, but not any flowers he knew from Earth. The aliens took Jake through long hallways lined with glass cases. Inside the cases were objects from many different worlds. Jake saw weapons, art, pieces of buildings, and even what looked like parts of spaceships. Everything was labeled in alien writing that Jake could not read. "Trophies," one of the aliens said when he noticed Jake looking. "From worlds we have conquered. Your world will provide trophies too when we are finished studying your species." The aliens put Jake in a small room with a bed, a toilet, and a small window. The window looked out into space. where Jake could see other alien ships joining the big crystal ship. There were dozens of them, all different shapes and sizes. Some looked like metal insects, others like floating rocks, and some like enormous sea creatures that could swim through space. Jake sat on the bed and tried not to cry. He was more scared than he had ever been in his life. He did not know where his mother was or if she was okay. He did not know what the aliens planned to do with them. And he did not know if anyone on Earth even knew what had happened to them. Through his small window, Jake could see the alien fleet moving through space toward unknown destinations. He wondered if he would ever see Earth again, or if he would spend the rest of his life as a prisoner on this strange ship. The glowing creatures on the walls pulsed slowly, like they were breathing. Jake watched them and tried to stay calm. Whatever was going to happen to him, he decided he would be brave. His mother had always taught him to be strong, even when things seemed hopeless. Jake did not know that in 3 days, he would be standing before the most powerful being in the galaxy, and that his words would change everything. For 3 days, Jake stayed in the small room on the alien ship. Every few hours, the aliens brought him food that looked like green soup and tasted like nothing he had ever eaten before. It was not good, but it was not terrible either. He ate it because he needed to stay strong. The aliens also brought him water that had a strange blue color. When Jake first saw it, he was afraid to drink it. But after a few hours of being very thirsty, he tried it. The water tasted normal, and it made him feel better. During those 3 days, Jake often looked out his small window at the other ships in the alien fleet. He counted more than 50 ships of different sizes. Sometimes he saw smaller ships flying between the big ones carrying supplies or passengers. The whole fleet was moving together towards something, but Jake did not know what. On the 3rd day, 2 aliens came to Jake's room. They were different from the ones he had seen before. These aliens wore special clothes that had many bright colors and strange symbols. One of them spoke to Jake in the same deep, strange voice he had heard when they first captured his ship. "You will come with us now. The Empress wants to see you." Jake did not know who the Empress was, but he knew it must be someone very important. He followed the aliens out of his room and through the long hallways of the ship. This time they went to parts of the ship Jake had not seen before. The hallways here were much bigger and more beautiful. The walls were covered with pictures that seemed to move and change colors. Jake saw images of different planets, strange animals, and alien cities that looked like they were made of light. Everything was so amazing that Jake almost forgot he was a prisoner. After walking for what felt like a very long time, they reached 2 enormous doors. The doors were so tall that Jake had to lean his head back to see the top of them. They were covered with carvings of alien creatures and symbols that Jake could not understand. The doors opened slowly, and Jake's mouth fell open in surprise. He was looking into the biggest room he had ever seen. The ceiling was so high that Jake could barely see it. It looked like the inside of a huge mountain, but everything was made of the same blue crystal as the outside of the ship. Thousands of aliens filled the room. They were sitting on seats that rose up from the floor in circles like a giant stadium. All of them were looking down at the center of the room where Jake was standing. The noise of their voices talking and clicking together was very loud, but what made Jake's heart beat fast was what he saw at the far end of the room. There was a throne that was bigger than a house, and sitting on it was the largest alien Jake had ever seen. Even sitting down, she was 3 times taller than Jake. Her blue crystal skin was much darker than the other aliens, almost purple. She had scars all over her body that looked like they came from many battles. This had to be the Empress. Jake also saw something that made him feel happy and scared at the same time. Hanging above the throne room in metal cages were his mother and the other humans from the New Horizon. The cages were suspended from long chains, and Jake could see that his mother was looking down at him. Even from far away, he could see the worry in her eyes. The alien guards pushed Jake forward, and he began walking across the huge floor toward the throne. With every step, he felt more nervous. The thousands of aliens in the seats were all staring at him, making clicking and whistling sounds. Jake tried to walk straight and look brave even though his legs felt weak. As he got closer to the throne, Jake could see the Empress more clearly. She had 4 eyes just like the other aliens, but hers were much larger. Each eye was the size of a dinner plate, and they were all focused on Jake. Her forearms were longer than Jake's whole body, and her hands had long, sharp claws. Around the throne stood many other aliens wearing fancy clothes. Jake guessed these were important people in the alien government or military. One of them had strange metal parts attached to his head and body. This alien stepped forward as Jake approached. "I am Kethamore," the alien with metal parts said. His voice sounded different from the others, more like a human voice, but still strange. "I will translate between you and Her Imperial Majesty, Empress Zixandra, ruler of the Zephyrian Empire and conqueror of 847 worlds." Jake stopped walking when he was about 20 feet away from the throne. He did not know if he should bow or kneel or just stand there. He decided to stand straight and try to look respectful but not scared. The Empress leaned forward on her throne. When she spoke, her voice was so deep and powerful that Jake could feel it in his chest. Kethmore translated her words. "Her Majesty says that you are very small even for a human. She wants to know if all human children are as small as you." Jake cleared his throat. "I'm not small for my age," he said. "I'm 16 years old, which is not a child by human standards." Kethmore translated Jake's words to the Empress. She made a sound that might have been laughter, but it sounded more like rocks falling down a mountain. The Empress spoke again, and Kethmore translated. "Her Majesty says that 16 years is nothing compared to her age of 3,000 years. To her, you are barely more than a baby." Jake did not know what to say to that. He looked up at the cages where his mother and the other humans were hanging. His mother was watching him, and Jake could see her lips moving. She was saying something, but he could not hear her over the noise in the throne room. The Empress continued speaking, and Kethmore kept translating. "Her Majesty wants you to know that you are here for a special purpose. She has been studying your species, and she has discovered something very interesting about humans. She has questions for you, and your answers will determine the fate of all humans in the galaxy." Jake felt his heart beating faster. The fate of all humans? That seemed like too much responsibility for anyone, especially a 16-year-old boy who just wanted to go home to Earth. The Empress raised one of her 4 arms, and the entire throne room became completely quiet. Even Jake could hear his own breathing in the silence. The Empress was ready to ask her question, and Jake knew that everything depended on how he answered. The silence in the throne room was so complete that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Thousands of alien eyes were staring at him, waiting to see what would happen next. Jake looked up at his mother in the hanging cage, and she gave him a small nod that seemed to say, "Be brave." Empress Zixandra leaned forward even more on her massive throne. When she spoke, her voice filled the entire room like thunder. Kethmore, the translator, listened carefully and then turned to Jake. "Her Imperial Majesty will now explain why you are here," Kethmore said. "She wants you to understand the importance of this moment." The Empress spoke again, and Kethmore translated her words. "Young human, your species presents a puzzle that the Zephyrian Empire has never encountered before. In our 3,000 years of expansion across the galaxy, we have met and conquered 847 different intelligent species." Jake listened carefully, trying to understand why this was important. Some species we conquered because they were strong and made good soldiers for our armies. Others we conquered because they were smart and could build things for us. Many species we simply destroyed because they were in our way and had nothing useful to offer us. The Empress gestured with one of her 4 arms, and suddenly the air above the throne room filled with moving pictures. Jake saw images of different alien species working in mines, building spaceships, and serving Zephyrian masters. Some of the aliens in the pictures looked sad and tired, like slaves. "This is the natural order of the galaxy," Kethmore continued translating. "The strong rule the weak. The smart use the stupid. The advanced control the primitive. This has been true everywhere we have gone, with every species we have met." The pictures in the air changed to show maps of the galaxy with different colored areas. Jake could see that most of the galaxy was colored blue, which he guessed meant it was controlled by the Zephyrian Empire. "But then we discovered humans," the Empress continued through Kethmore. "And humans do something that makes no sense to us." New pictures appeared in the air. These showed humans working together with other alien species, but not as masters and slaves. They looked like they were cooperating as equals. Jake saw humans and aliens building things together, exploring planets together, and even eating meals together like friends. Everywhere humans go, other species choose to follow them. They do this even when the humans are weaker, less intelligent, and fewer in number than they are. Jake saw pictures of the Centaurian traders, who looked like large birds with golden feathers. The pictures showed them abandoning profitable trade routes to work with human merchants instead. The aquatic Delonians live in the deep oceans of their worlds and almost never come to the surface. But when humans arrived in their system, they came out of their oceans to join human exploration missions. More pictures showed whale-like creatures swimming through space alongside human ships, even the territorial Kronak, who have fought wars to keep other species away from their planets, now allow humans to live on their worlds as partners. Jake saw images of huge, bear-like aliens working side by side with humans to build cities and farms. This defies every natural law we understand, the Empress continued. In nature, the weak serve the strong, but somehow, the strong choose to serve humans, even though humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. The pictures disappeared, and the Empress leaned back on her throne. She stared at Jake with all four of her enormous eyes. Our intelligence reports show that this pattern happens everywhere humans go. Other species abandon their own interest to help humans achieve their goals. They fight beside humans in battles they could easily avoid. They share their technology and resources with humans who have little to offer in return. Jake was starting to understand why the aliens found this confusing. From their point of view, it really did not make sense. We have studied human biology and found nothing special. Humans are not the strongest species. The Kronak are 10 times stronger. Humans are not the smartest species. The ethereal minds have brains twice the size of human brains. Humans are not the most numerous species. There are trillions of hive workers in the galaxy, but only billions of humans. The Empress stood up from her throne, and Jake had to step back because she was so tall. Even standing far away from her, Jake felt like a tiny ant looking up at a giant. So humans have no natural advantages that would explain why other species follow them. Yet they do follow them willingly and enthusiastically. This threatens everything our empire is built on. Jake was beginning to understand the real reason he was here. The aliens were not just curious about humans. They were worried about them. If other species will follow humans instead of serving us, our empire could fall apart. If humans can inspire loyalty without using force, then everything we believe about power and control might be wrong. The Empress sat back down and leaned forward until her face was close to Jake. Her breath smelled like metal and flowers, so I will ask you directly, human child. What makes your species believe they deserve to lead when they are not the strongest, not the smartest, and not the most numerous in the galaxy? What gives humans the right to inspire loyalty from species that could easily destroy them? The throne room became silent again. Jake felt the weight of thousands of alien eyes on him. He looked up at his mother, who was watching him with hope and fear in her eyes. He thought about all the crew members from the New Horizon, who were also hanging in cages above him. Jake realized that his answer to this question would decide what happened to every human in the galaxy. If the Empress did not like his answer, she might order her empire to destroy Earth and all the human colonies. But if he could help her understand why other species chose to work with humans, maybe he could save not just his own life but the lives of everyone he cared about. Jake took a deep breath and prepared to give the most important answer of his life. Jake stood in the enormous throne room, feeling the weight of every alien eye upon him. The silence was so complete that he could hear the soft humming sounds made by the glowing creatures on the walls. He looked up at his mother one more time, and she nodded at him with encouragement in her eyes. Jake thought about everything the Empress had said. He thought about the research his mother did, about the crew of the New Horizon, and about every story he had ever heard of humans working with other species. When he finally spoke, his voice was clear and steady. "Your Majesty," Jake began, "you are asking the wrong question." A sound like rustling leaves filled the throne room as thousands of aliens shifted in their seats. Jake could hear clicking and whistling sounds as they talked to each other in surprise. No one had ever told the Empress that she was wrong about anything. Empress Zixandra's 4 eyes narrowed, and she leaned forward on her throne. Jake could see that she was not happy with his answer, but he continued speaking. "You ask what gives humans the right to lead, but humans do not want to lead. We want to help. Every species you talked about, the Centaurians, the Delonians, the Kronak, they do not follow us because we are better than them. They choose to work with us because we are the only species they have met that asks, 'What do you need?' instead of 'What can you give us?'" Jake pointed up at the cages where his mother and the other humans were hanging. "When my mother studies alien biology, she does not look for weaknesses that she can use against them. She looks for ways to help different species live better lives and adapt to new environments." The Empress was listening carefully, but Jake could not tell if she understood what he was trying to say. When human traders meet the Centaurians, they do not just want to make money. They ask how they can make trade good for both humans and Centaurians. They want everyone to benefit, not just themselves. Jake thought about all the stories he had heard from other human explorers and scientists. When humans explore new planets, we do not just take what we want and leave. We ask the species who already live there how we can help them. We share our technology and knowledge, and we ask them to share theirs with us. The throne room was still completely quiet, but Jake could see some of the aliens nodding slightly, as if they were beginning to understand. Your empire has conquered 847 species by being stronger than them, smarter than them, and having more soldiers than them, but you have never tried being kinder than them. You have never asked what other species need from you, only what you need from them. Jake's voice grew stronger as he continued. That is why you do not understand humans, Your Majesty. We do not lead because we think we are better than other species. We lead because we serve other species, and service, not conquest, is what makes others want to follow you. The Empress was very still, staring at Jake with all four of her eyes. Jake could not tell what she was thinking, but he knew he had to keep explaining. When the Kronak let humans live on their planets, it is not because humans forced them to. It is because humans asked the Kronak what they needed help with, and then humans worked hard to provide that help. The Kronak had problems with their crops, and humans shared knowledge about farming. The Kronak had sick children, and human doctors helped heal them. Jake looked around the throne room at all the alien faces watching him. The Delonians came out of their oceans to work with humans because humans did not try to force them to. Instead, humans learned the Delonian language and went down into the oceans to meet them where they were comfortable. Humans asked the Delonians to teach them about ocean exploration, and in return, humans taught the Delonians about space travel. The Empress finally spoke, and Kethmore translated her words. Her Majesty wants to know what humans get in return for all this helping and serving. Jake smiled for the first time since he had been captured. We get friends, Your Majesty. We get to learn amazing things from species that are different from us. We get to see parts of the galaxy we could never explore alone. And most importantly, we get to be part of something bigger than just humanity. Jake thought about his mother's research and how excited she had been about the glowing plants they had found. My mother was so happy to study those alien plants, because she knew that understanding them might help not just humans, but any species that travels in space. She was not thinking about profit or power. She was thinking about how knowledge can make life better for everyone. The Empress spoke again, and Kethmore translated. Her Majesty asks why humans care about making life better for species they have never met. This was the most important part of Jake's answer, and he knew it. Because we believe that every intelligent species has value, Your Majesty. We believe that the galaxy is big enough for everyone, and that we are all stronger when we work together than when we fight against each other. Jake paused, thinking about how to explain this in a way the Empress would understand. Your empire is powerful because you have conquered many species. But think about how much more powerful you could be if all those species chose to work with you because they wanted to, not because they were forced to. The alien crowds in the throne room were making more noise now, clicking and whistling to each other as they discussed what Jake had said. Imagine if instead of using fear to control other species, you used kindness to inspire them. Imagine if instead of taking what you want from conquered worlds, you asked what you could give to them. Imagine if your empire was built on friendship instead of fear. Jake looked directly at the Empress, no longer afraid of her enormous size and power. That is why other species follow humans, Your Majesty. Not because we are stronger or smarter, but because we care about them. And caring about others is the most powerful force in the galaxy. The throne room fell silent again as everyone waited to see how the Empress would respond to Jake's words. For what felt like forever, Empress Zixandra stared at Jake without moving or speaking. The massive throne room was so quiet that Jake could hear his own breathing. Thousands of aliens watched and waited to see what their Empress would do to the human boy who had dared to challenge everything their empire believed in. Jake expected the Empress to be angry. He expected her to order his execution or to send armies to destroy Earth. Instead, something happened that no one in the throne room had ever seen before. The ancient Empress slowly stood up from her throne. She had not done this for visiting leaders in over a century. Her enormous form towered over Jake, casting a shadow across the floor of the throne room. But instead of anger in her four eyes, Jake saw something else, something that looked almost like sadness. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Empress said, her deep voice carrying across the silent room, no one has ever offered to serve us. Kethmore translated her words, his voice filled with amazement. The Empress continued speaking, and her words made the alien crowds gasp in surprise. They have begged us for mercy. They have offered us treasure and tribute. They have promised to submit to our rule and obey our commands. But never in all our centuries of expansion has anyone asked what we needed from them. The Empress looked around the throne room at her own people. We have been conquerors for so long that we have forgotten what it feels like to be cared for. Jake watched as something changed in the Empress's expression. The hardness in her eyes was softening, and she looked less like a terrifying ruler and more like someone who was very, very tired. Tell me, young human, the Empress said, looking back down at Jake. If I were to free your people and send you safely back to your worlds, what would you ask of us in return? Jake's answer came immediately without any hesitation. Help us help others, Your Majesty. Use your knowledge and technology to make life better for all the species in your empire. Turn your war fleets into rescue fleets. Transform your empire from one built on fear into one built on hope. The Empress was quiet for a long moment, thinking about Jake's words. Then she asked another question. And what would humans offer to us in return for this transformation? Friendship, Jake said simply. We would teach you what we know about cooperation and caring for others. We would share our discoveries and our dreams. We would explore the galaxy together as partners, not as masters and servants. Jake looked up at his mother in the hanging cage, and then back at the Empress. And we would help you discover something that your empire has never known. The joy of making others happy, instead of just making them afraid. The Empress closed all four of her eyes and stood in silence for nearly a minute. When she opened them again, she looked directly at Jake and spoke words that would change the galaxy forever. For 3,000 years, I have been Empress of the Zephyrian Empire, ruler of conquered worlds and commander of countless armies. Today I choose to become a student of humanity. What happened next shocked everyone in the throne room so much that many of them would remember it for the rest of their lives. The most powerful being in the known galaxy, the conqueror of 847 worlds, slowly lowered herself to one knee before a 16-year-old human boy. The sound that filled the throne room was like thunder. One by one, starting with Captain Vexatai and the other military commanders, every single alien in the enormous chamber followed their Empress's example. Thousands of Zephyrians knelt, their carapaces touching the crystal floor with sounds like rain on a roof. Jake stood in the center of it all, overwhelmed by what was happening. He had come here as a prisoner expecting to die. Instead, he had somehow started a revolution with nothing but honest words and a caring heart. The Empress gestured with one of her arms, and the cages holding Jake's mother and the other humans were lowered to the floor. The cage doors opened and Jake ran to hug his mother as she stepped out. I'm so proud of you, his mother whispered in his ear as she held him tight. You just changed the course of galactic history. Over the following days, Jake watched as the Zephyrian Empire began the most dramatic transformation any civilization had ever undergone. The Empress ordered her fleets to stop all conquest activities. Instead of invading new worlds, Zephyrian ships began carrying medical supplies, food, and technology to planets that needed help. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were given their freedom and asked what they needed to rebuild their worlds. Many chose to stay and work with the Zephyrians, but now as equals and partners rather than slaves. The Empress herself spent hours each day talking with Jake and his mother, learning about human philosophy and science. She was particularly interested in Dr. Morrison's research on helping species adapt to new environments. We have spent so much time taking from others, the Empress told them one day, that we forgot how good it feels to give. Jake was given the honor of being the first human ambassador to the Zephyrian Empire. His job was to help establish peaceful relationships between humans and the hundreds of species in Zephyrian territory. As Jake stood on the observation deck of the massive crystal ship, watching human and alien vessels working together to deliver supplies to a planet recovering from natural disasters, he thought about how much had changed in just a few weeks. The galaxy was still full of conflicts and problems, but now there was something new spreading through the stars: hope. The idea that different species could work together as friends instead of fighting as enemies was inspiring civilizations everywhere. Jake smiled as he watched his mother working with Zephyrian scientists to develop new medicines that could help dozens of different species. This was what the future could look like: Not one species ruling over all the others, but all species working together to make the galaxy a better place for everyone. The age of conquest was ending. The age of cooperation had begun. And it all started with a simple question from an alien queen and an honest answer from a human boy who believed that caring for others was more powerful than conquering them. Jake Morrison had learned that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply tell the truth, especially when that truth is about the power of kindness.